The mud on Karga's knees had long since dried into a crust that cracked with every trembling movement. But she barely noticed, as the three human men loomed over her father's broken body in the dim light of their farmhouse. Her father, Grosh, lay on the floor where they had thrown him, one eye swollen shut, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, his breathing labored and wet. He had been a strong orc once, before the injury that had taken his leg in the border wars, before they had fled his clan to try to make a life in human lands, before the debts had piled up like winter snow, silent, cold, and suffocating. 200 gold pieces, the tallest man said, his voice like gravel scraping against stone. He wore a leather vest that strained over his belly, and his beard was stained yellow with tobacco. That's what your father owes Merchant Harrow, and Merchant Harrow wants his money tonight. Karga's hands were clenched so tight her claws had drawn blood from her own palms. She was 19 summers old, her green skin marked with the darker stripes that ran through her mother's bloodline, her tusks small and curved like her father's. She had grown up listening to humans call her monster, beast, green-skin filth. But she had never felt as helpless as she did now, kneeling in the dirt of their rented hovel while her father bled. "We don't have it," she said, forcing the words through a throat that felt like it was closing. "The crop failed. The drought killed everything. We told the merchant we would pay when, the second man interrupted. He was younger, with a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. We're tired of when. Harrow wants payment now, or he'll take what's owed in other ways." The third man had been silent until now, standing by the door with his arms crossed. He was broader than the others, with cold eyes that had been studying Karga since they had burst through the door. "The orc girl looks strong enough," he said, and something in his tone made Karga's skin crawl. "Might be worth something. Could work off the debt in the pleasure houses down in Millbrook. Exotic creatures fetch a high price." Her father made a sound that was half groan, half roar, trying to push himself up with his one good leg. "Touch her and I'll," the tall man kicked him in the ribs and Grosh collapsed with a gasp. "You'll what?" the tall man sneered. "You're a crippled orc with no clan, no coin, and no prospects. You've got nothing to bargain with except her." He jerked his chin at Karga. "And honestly, I'm being generous even offering this. Most would just slit your throats and be done with it." Karga's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her chest. The pleasure houses. She had heard stories about what happened to orc women who ended up in those places, traded between humans like livestock, used until they broke. Some never came out again. "Please," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "Give us more time. One more season, I'll work. I'll do anything. I can hunt. I can labor in the fields. You can spread your legs and make your father's debt disappear," the scarred man said bluntly. "That's what you can do." She wanted to lunge at him, to tear his throat out with her teeth, but her father was still on the ground, still bleeding, and if she fought, they would kill him. They would kill them both. So she stayed on her knees, trembling with rage and terror, searching desperately for any way out of this nightmare. "How long?" she heard herself ask. "How long would I have to work?" The tall man exchanged glances with his companions and something like satisfaction crossed his face. "Until the debt's paid. Could be a year. Could be 5. Depends on how popular you are. 5 years. 5 years in a pleasure house with human men who saw her as nothing more than a monster to be used. 5 years of surviving each day, each night, until the light inside her went out completely. But her father would live. That was something. She was opening her mouth to agree to sell herself for her father's life, when the farmhouse door burst open with such force that it slammed against the wall and rebounded. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the last light of dusk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that came from years of hard labor rather than deliberate training. His hair was dark brown, almost black in the shadows, and when he stepped into the room, Karga saw that his eyes were a startling blue, bright as summer sky. "What in the hell is going on here?" he demanded, and his voice carried the kind of authority that made the three men turn toward him immediately. The tall man recovered first, his expression shifting to something approximating politeness. "None of your concern, friend. We're here on Merchant Harrow's business collecting a debt. Move along." But the stranger did not move along. Instead, he stepped further into the room, his gaze sweeping over Grosh's broken body, Karga's position on her knees, the three men arranged like predators around prey. Something hardened in his face. "Looks less like collecting a debt and more like assault to me," he said quietly. The scarred man laughed without humor. "That's rich coming from you, Sawyer. Everyone knows you're a killer. At least we're trying to settle this peacefully. Sawyer." Karga filed the name away, studying this stranger who had walked into their disaster. He wore simple farmer's clothes, a homespun shirt, worn trousers, scuffed boots, but there was something about the way he held himself that suggested he could be dangerous if he chose to be. His hands were calloused and strong, and there was a long knife at his belt. "Peacefully," Sawyer repeated, his tone flat. "That why the old orc is bleeding on the floor. Old orc owes Harrow 200 gold, the tall man said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "We came to collect. He can't pay in coin, so we're arranging alternative payment. Not your business, Forrest. So the full name was Sawyer Forrest." Karga watched as he moved closer, his boots barely making a sound on the packed dirt floor. He crouched down beside her father, checking his injuries with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the tension in his shoulders. "Can you stand?" Sawyer asked Grosh softly. Her father's good eye focused on him with difficulty. Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't like the odds here," Sawyer replied. He stood, turning to face the three debt collectors. 200 gold, you said?" The tall man nodded slowly, suspicion crossing his face. "That's right. You offering to pay it?" For a long moment, Sawyer was silent. Karga found herself holding her breath, hope and disbelief warring in her chest. No one helped orcs. No one intervened when debt collectors came calling. That was just the way the world worked. Then Sawyer reached into his shirt and pulled out a leather pouch. He untied the strings and turned it over, and gold coins spilled onto the ground between them, gleaming in the firelight. They made small musical sounds as they fell, pinging against each other, bright and impossible. Karga stared. She had never seen that much gold in one place in her entire life. 200, Sawyer said. "Count it if you want." The three men looked at the gold, then at each other, then at Sawyer. The tall man's face had gone slack with surprise. "You're just paying it just like that?" "Just like that," Sawyer confirmed. "Now get out." But the man with the cold eyes, the one who had suggested selling Karga to the pleasure houses, was not satisfied. "Why?" he demanded. "Why would you throw away 200 gold on a crippled orc and his monster daughter? What's your angle, Forrest?" Something flickered in Sawyer's eyes, something old and tired. "No angle. I just don't like watching strong men beat up the weak and threaten women. Call it a character flaw." His hand drifted to the knife at his belt, casual but unmistakable. "Now I said get out. Don't make me say it again." The silence stretched thin and dangerous. Karga could see the calculations happening behind the tall man's eyes, weighing the gold against the satisfaction of pushing back, measuring the risk of fighting Sawyer Forrest, whoever he was. Finally, greed won out. The tall man scooped up the gold coins, counting them quickly before dividing them with his companions. "Harrow's going to want to know about this," he muttered. "Going to want to know why you're protecting greenskins. Tell him whatever you want, Sawyer said, but tell him from somewhere else. The three men filed out, the scarred one shooting Karga a last look that made her stomach turn. When the door closed behind them, the sudden quiet was overwhelming. Karga could hear her own ragged breathing, her father's pained gasps, the crackle of the small fire in the hearth. Sawyer crouched down again, this time beside Karga. Up close, she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. He was older than she had first thought, maybe 35 or 40 summers, but there was a steadiness to him that was oddly comforting. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Your father needs a healer. Can you walk? Help me get him to my wagon." "Why?" The word came out harsh, suspicious. "Why did you do that? Why did you pay our debt?" Sawyer met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something like sorrow in his expression. "Because I've seen too many people get destroyed by debts they can't pay," he said quietly. "And because no one should be sold like property, not for any reason." He stood, offering her his hand. "Come on, we need to move before those vultures change their minds and come back." Karga stared at his outstretched hand. It was calloused and scarred, a working man's hand, but it was steady and open. Slowly, she placed her own hand in his and let him help her to her feet. Her legs were shaking, and she felt light-headed, like the world had tilted sideways and she was still trying to find her balance. Together they got her father upright, Grosh's arms slung over Sawyer's shoulders. The orc was heavier than he looked, solid muscle despite his injury and illness, but Sawyer carried the weight without complaint. They made their way outside to where a wagon waited, hitched to a sturdy brown mare who nickered softly at their approach. The night air was cool and clean after the suffocating atmosphere of the farmhouse. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance a night bird called. Karga helped her father into the back of the wagon, settling him on a pile of straw and blankets. "There's a healer about 3 miles north," Sawyer said, climbing into the driver's seat. "Old woman named Martha. She'll see to him, ask no questions." "We can't pay her," Karga said, the words bitter in her mouth. "We can't pay you back either. The 200 gold, I mean. We have nothing." Sawyer glanced back at her, and in the moonlight his expression was unreadable. "I didn't ask you to pay me back." "But I didn't ask," he repeated, firmer this time. "Now hold on to your father. The road's rough." He was not lying about the road. The wagon jolted and swayed over ruts and stones, and Karga braced herself against the side while keeping one hand on her father's shoulder. Grosh had slipped into unconsciousness, which was probably a mercy given how much pain he had to be in. 200 gold pieces. Just thrown down like they were nothing. Like her life, her body, her future were worth that much to a complete stranger. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. "Who are you?" she called up to Sawyer, pitching her voice over the creak of the wagon wheels. "Really? Why would you have that much gold just in your pocket?" For a long moment, she thought he was not going to answer. Then he said, "I'm a farmer. I sold my autumn harvest and my breeding bull last week. The gold was going to buy more land come spring." His shoulders rose and fell in a shrug. Land can wait. A farmer who threw away land money to save 2 orcs he had never met. Karga did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You're insane," she said. "Probably," Sawyer agreed, and there was something almost like humor in his voice. The healer's cottage appeared out of the darkness like something from a tale, small and tidy with smoke rising from the chimney and herbs hanging to dry under the eaves. Sawyer pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down, moving to help Karga with her father. An old woman emerged from the cottage before they could knock, a lantern in her hand and a sharp expression on her weathered face. "Sawyer Forest," she said. "It's past midnight. This better be good. Injured orc needs tending, Sawyer said simply. Can you help? Martha's eyes narrowed as she raised the lantern, illuminating Grosh's battered face. What happened? Debt collectors got rough. I see. Martha's mouth pressed into a thin line, but she stood aside. Bring him in. Put him on the table by the fire. The inside of the cottage was warm and smelled of dried lavender and something else, something medicinal and slightly bitter. They laid Grosh on a sturdy wooden table, and Martha set to work immediately, her gnarled hands surprisingly gentle as she examined his injuries. Broken rib, she announced after a few minutes. Maybe two. That eye's going to be swollen shut for a week, but there's no permanent damage. The real problem is this older wound here. She indicated the stump of Grosh's missing leg. It's infected. Has been for a while, I'd wager. Karga felt her chest tighten. She had known her father was ill, but he had always brushed off her concerns, insisting he was fine. Can you treat it? I can, Martha said, but it's going to take time. He needs rest, proper food, and medicine. 3 weeks at least, maybe a month. Her gaze fixed on Karga, assessing. You his daughter? Yes. You know anything about nursing? Some. My mother taught me before she died. Martha nodded as if that settled something. Good, you'll stay here and help me. There's a room out back, small but clean. You can sleep there. We can't afford, Karga started, but Martha waved her off. Sawyer's paying, she said bluntly. Aren't you Sawyer? Sawyer, who had been standing quietly by the door, nodded. Whatever they need. This was too much. This was all too much. Karga felt something hot building behind her eyes, a pressure that threatened to spill over into tears. I don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? We're orcs. We're nothing to you. Sawyer looked at her for a long moment, and his blue eyes were sad. You're not nothing, he said quietly. No one's nothing, he turned to Martha. Send word when he's well enough to travel. I'll be at my farm. Wait, Karga said, stepping toward him. At least tell me your name, your full name, and where your farm is, so we can find you to repay you. Sawyer Forest, he said. My farm's about 15 miles west of here, near the edge of the Thornwood, but you don't need to find me. You don't owe me anything. Yes, we do, Karga insisted. We owe you everything. Something complicated crossed Sawyer's face, something that looked almost like pain. No, he said softly. You don't. Trust me on that. And then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click, the sound of the wagon fading into the night. Karga stood there, staring at the closed door, feeling like she had been picked up by a storm and set down somewhere completely unfamiliar. He's a strange one, Martha said, breaking the silence. But his heart's in the right place. Now come help me with these bandages. Your father needs tending, and we've got work to do. The next weeks passed in a blur of labor and worry. Karga learned that Martha had been a healer for 40 years, had seen every kind of injury and illness that the frontier could produce, and had no patience for foolishness or self-pity. She worked Karga hard, teaching her how to brew medicines from herbs, how to clean and dress wounds properly, how to read the signs of fever and infection. Grosh improved slowly. The infection in his leg responded to Martha's poultices. The swelling in his face went down, and the broken ribs began to heal. But the process was painful and frustrating, and more than once Karga heard her father weeping in the night, overwhelmed by everything they had lost and everything they owed to a stranger. 200 gold pieces, he would mutter, and the healing costs, and room and board. How will we ever repay that? Karga had no answer. The debt hung over them like a shadow, immense and impossible. But at least this time the debt was owed to someone who did not threaten to sell her to a pleasure house, and that had to count for something. 3 weeks after the night Sawyer had saved them, Karga was out back of Martha's cottage, hanging herbs to dry, when she heard the sound of a wagon approaching. Her heart jumped into her throat, old fear making her hand drift to the knife at her belt. But when she came around the front of the cottage, she saw that it was Sawyer's brown mare, and Sawyer himself sitting in the driver's seat. He looked tired, she thought. There were shadows under his eyes and dirt on his clothes, like he had been working from dawn to dusk without rest. But he smiled when he saw her, a small, cautious expression that made him look younger. "Hello," he said, climbing down from the wagon. "I came to see how your father's doing." "Better," Karga replied, suddenly aware of how rough she looked herself. She had not thought much about her appearance in weeks, had been too focused on nursing and learning. But now, with Sawyer standing there watching her, she felt self-conscious. "He's walking a bit now, still weak, but Martha says he'll make a full recovery." "That's good. That's really good." Sawyer seemed genuinely relieved. "And you, how are you holding up?" No one had asked her that, not even her father, who was too wrapped up in his own pain and guilt. The question caught Karga off guard, and she found herself answering honestly. "I'm tired and scared. And I don't know what we're going to do when we leave here. We can't go back to the farmhouse. Merchant Harrow still owns it. We have no money, no prospects, and now we owe you a debt we can never repay." Sawyer was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady on her face. "What if I had a proposition for you?" he said finally. Karga's stomach dropped. Here it was then. The catch. The reason he had really helped them. "What kind of proposition?" she asked, keeping her voice carefully neutral. "I need help on my farm," Sawyer said. "It's a big property, 200 acres of fields, orchards, livestock. I've been managing it alone since my brother died last year, and it's too much for one person. I need someone who knows how to work hard, who can handle livestock and field labor, who can help with the harvest." He paused, and Karga waited for the other part, the part where he explained what he really wanted from her. "I'm offering you and your father jobs," Sawyer continued. "Fair wages, room and board, and the chance to earn enough to start over somewhere if you want, or if you like it, you can stay. I don't care that you're orcs, I care that you can work." Karga stared at him. "You're offering us jobs," she repeated slowly. "That's it, just work?" "That's it," Sawyer confirmed. "Unless you want to consider it partial repayment for the debt, though like I said, I don't expect repayment. But I figure you're the kind of person who needs to feel like you're earning your way, so this seems like it might work for both of us." It was too good to be true. It had to be. "What's the catch?" Karga demanded. "There's always a catch." Sawyer's expression grew serious. "The catch is that you'll face prejudice. My farm's fairly isolated, but I do have neighbors, and I go into town for supplies. People are going to talk. They're going to say things. Some might refuse to trade with me anymore because I'm housing orcs. It won't be easy." "That's the catch." Karga said. "That people will be mean to us. That's just life." "I know," Sawyer said quietly, "but I wanted you to be aware. And I need you to know that if you come work for me, I'll protect you. Both of you. The same way I did that night. I won't let anyone hurt you or take advantage of you. You have my word on that." Karga felt something shift in her chest, something that had been locked tight beginning to loosen. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care? We're nothing to you, less than nothing." Sawyer looked away, his jaw working. When he spoke again, his voice was low and rough. 5 years ago, I was a soldier. Border patrol, fighting orc raiders. I did my duty, killed when I had to, lost good friends to orc blades." He took a breath. "Then one day we found an orc village that had been destroyed by bandits. Human bandits stealing children to sell as slaves. We were too late to stop it, but we found one child still alive, hiding in a root cellar. A little orc girl, maybe 6 years old." Karga's throat was tight. "My commander wanted to leave her," Sawyer continued. "Said she'd just grow up to kill humans anyway, that orcs were better off dead." But I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave her there to starve. So I took her to the nearest orc clan, returned her to her people. He finally looked back at Karga and his eyes were haunted. They killed me for it, or tried to, stabbed me, left me for dead in the forest. Said I was probably the one who had attacked their village in the first place, that all humans were the same. But you survived, Karga said softly. I survived. Took me months to heal, and by the time I could fight again, I was done with the military. Done with the whole damn war. I came out here, bought land, started farming, tried to build something that didn't involve killing. He rubbed a hand over his face. So when I saw those men threatening you and your father, I saw that little girl all over again, and I couldn't walk away. I won't walk away. Not from people who need help, regardless of what they are. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared pain and understanding. Karga thought about her mother, who had died defending their home from human raiders. She thought about her father, who had lost his leg in a battle he had not wanted to fight. She thought about all the hatred and violence that flowed between their peoples like a river of blood, endless and senseless. Your offer, she said finally, is it real? You really want us to come work on your farm? It's real, Sawyer said. And I really want you to come, both of you. Karga took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. Then yes, she said. We'll come, we'll work for you, and we'll earn our place, I promise you that. The smile that crossed Sawyer's face was like sunrise after a long night, bright and warm and genuine. Good, he said. That's good. Talk to your father, and when Martha clears him to travel, come to the farm. I'll be waiting. 1 week later, Karga and her father arrived at Sawyer's farm in the back of Martha's wagon, with all their worldly possessions packed into 2 small bundles. The farm was larger than Karga had imagined. Sprawling fields golden with stubble from the harvest, neat rows of apple trees heavy with fruit, a sturdy barn and several outbuildings. The main house was modest but well built, 2 stories of timber and stone with a wide porch and shuttered windows. Sawyer came out to meet them, wiping his hands on a rag. Welcome, he said simply. Let me show you around. The tour took the better part of an hour. There were chickens to feed, goats to milk, a pair of pigs that Sawyer had recently acquired, and fields that would need to be prepared for winter wheat. The work was endless and varied, but Karga felt something in her chest lighten as Sawyer explained each task. This was honest labor. This was something she could do, something she could be good at. Your quarters are in the barn loft, Sawyer said, leading them to the large structure. I know it's not fancy, but it's warm and dry and there's plenty of room. I already set up 2 beds and a stove. If you need anything else, let me know and I'll see what I can do. The loft was actually quite comfortable, with thick blankets on the beds and a window that looked out over the fields. It was more space than Karga and her father had shared in the hovel they had been renting, and infinitely cleaner. This is more than sufficient, Grosh said, his voice gruff with emotion. Thank you, Mr. Forrest, for everything. I don't know how, just Sawyer, Sawyer interrupted gently. No need for formality here. And like I told your daughter, you don't need to thank me. Just work hard and we'll call it even. They settled into a routine quickly. Karga woke before dawn each day, helping Sawyer with the morning chores, feeding the animals, collecting eggs, milking the goats. Grosh, still recovering his strength, took on lighter tasks like mending fences, sorting apples, and keeping the tools in good repair. Sawyer worked alongside them, never asking them to do anything he would not do himself, and treating them with a respect that Karga had never experienced from a human before. The first week passed, then the second. Autumn deepened into the cold bite of early winter, and the work shifted to preparing the farm for the harsh months ahead. They harvested the last of the apples, pressed cider, salted meat, and chopped enough firewood to see them through to spring. Karga found herself watching Sawyer when she thought he was not looking. She noticed the way he moved, efficient and purposeful, never wasting motion. She noticed how he talked to the animals, patient and kind, how he whistled sometimes when he worked. Old soldiers' songs turned into something softer. She noticed the way the lamplight caught in his dark hair at night when they all sat around the kitchen table for dinner, passing bowls of stew and bread. It was dangerous, this noticing. He was human and she was orc. The gulf between them was unbridgeable. No matter how kind he was, no matter how her heart had started to beat faster when he smiled at her. One evening in late autumn, after her father had retired to the loft with his pipe and a book Sawyer had lent him, Karga found herself alone with Sawyer in the kitchen. She was washing dishes while he dried them, a companionable silence between them. "You're good at this," Sawyer said suddenly. "Farming, I mean. You've got good instincts," Karga shrugged, focusing on scrubbing a pot. "My mother grew up in an orc farming community before the wars. She taught me what she remembered. She sounds like she was a strong woman." "She was." Karga's throat tightened. "She died defending our home when I was 16. Raiders burned everything. That's when my father and I fled north trying to start over." Sawyer was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for what happened to your mother and for everything else your people have endured." The unexpected sympathy made tears prick at Karga's eyes. She blinked them away furiously. "It's war," she said. "People die in war, humans, orcs, it doesn't matter." "It should matter," Sawyer said quietly. "Every death should matter." Karga looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the same sorrow in his face that she felt in her own heart. He understood loss. He understood regret. Whatever he had done in the war, whatever he had seen, it had marked him just as deeply as her own experiences had marked her. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. That little orc girl you saved, do you ever wonder what happened to her, if she survived?" Sawyer's hand stilled on the plate he was drying. "Every day," he admitted. "I hope she grew up strong. I hope she found happiness despite everything." He set the plate down carefully. "And I hope that somewhere, somehow, the fact that I tried to help her mattered, that it meant something." "It mattered," Karga said softly. "It meant you're a good man, Sawyer Forrest, better than most." He looked at her and something passed between them, something electric and terrifying and wonderful. For just a moment, Karga thought he might reach out, might touch her face or take her hand. But then the moment passed, and Sawyer cleared his throat, stepping back. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice slightly rough. "Big day tomorrow. We need to move the sheep to the lower pasture before the snow comes." Karga nodded, not trusting her voice. She finished the last of the dishes in silence, then climbed to the loft where her father was already snoring gently. But she lay awake for a long time, staring at the rafters and thinking about the way Sawyer had looked at her, the way her heart had responded. This was foolish. This was impossible. But somewhere between the debts and the healing and the harvest, she had started to fall for him, and she had no idea what to do about it. The first snow came 3 weeks later, transforming the farm into something from a winter tale. Karga woke to find the world covered in white, the fields pristine and the trees bowed under the weight of it. Everything was quiet, muffled, peaceful. She dressed quickly and made her way to the barn, expecting to find Sawyer already at work. Instead, she found him standing in the doorway, staring out at the snow with an expression that was part wonder, part melancholy. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said when he noticed her. "Yes," Karga agreed, coming to stand beside him. "Where I grew up, we didn't get much snow." "It's strange seeing everything so white and quiet." "I used to love snow when I was a kid," Sawyer said. "My brother and I would spend hours building snow forts, having battles. Everything seemed simpler then. He shook his head. Listen to me, getting nostalgic. Come on, the animals won't feed themselves. They worked together in the quiet barn, the only sounds the rustling of straw and the contented noises of the livestock. Karga was forking hay into the sheep pen when she heard voices outside, human voices, male and aggressive. Sawyer heard them too. His expression hardened, and he moved to the barn door with a speed that reminded Karga he had been a soldier. "Stay here," he said quietly, but Karga was not about to hide. She grabbed a pitchfork and followed him out into the snow. 3 men stood in the farmyard, and Karga recognized them with a sick jolt, the debt collectors who had beaten her father, who had threatened to sell her. The tall one, the scarred one, and the cold-eyed one. They looked angry and cold, their breath steaming in the morning air. "Forrest," the tall man said, "we need to talk to you." "About what?" Sawyer's voice was flat, unwelcoming. "About your orc workers. People in town are talking. They don't like that you're harboring greenskins out here, treating them like they're people." "They are people," Sawyer said. "And what I do on my land is my business." The scarred man spat into the snow. "It becomes everyone's business when you're harboring potential threats. Orcs killed 3 farmers last month over in Redfield. Who's to say yours won't do the same?" "Mine won't do anything except work and mind their business," Sawyer said, his voice hardening. "Same as I expect my neighbors to do. Now, unless you have official business here, I suggest you leave." "Official business," the cold-eyed man repeated mockingly. "That's good." "Yeah, we've got official business. Merchant Harrow wants his property back." Sawyer's hand moved to the axe tucked into his belt. "I paid that debt in full. The orc and his daughter don't owe Harrow anything." "See, that's where you're wrong," the tall man said, and there was something nasty in his smile. "Turns out you paid with counterfeit gold. Half those coins were fake, which means the debt's not settled, which means the orc girl still belongs to us." The lie was so blatant that Karga almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about the way the 3 men were spreading out, positioning themselves to surround Sawyer. "That's interesting," Sawyer said, his voice deadly calm. "Because I got those coins directly from the merchant bank in Millbrook, and I've got the receipt to prove it. So either you're lying, or someone's been skimming from Harrow's collection and blaming it on counterfeit. I wonder which it could be." The tall man's face flushed red. "You calling us thieves?" "I'm calling you liars," Sawyer said flatly. "And I'm telling you that you have about 10 seconds to get off my land before I make you get off my land." The cold-eyed man drew a knife. Big words from one man facing 3. "He is not facing 3, Karga said, stepping forward with her pitchfork. "He is facing 1. We are facing 3. Grosh emerged from the barn behind her, leaning on a stout walking stick that could easily double as a club. 2, he corrected, his voice a low growl. "We are facing 3. The math had changed, and the debt collectors knew it. Sawyer was clearly dangerous, and now he had backup, including an orc woman who was gripping a pitchfork like she knew how to use it, and an injured orc male who looked like he would be happy to die taking one of them with him. "This isn't over," the tall man said, backing toward their horses. "Harrow's going to hear about this. You're going to regret protecting these greenskins." "I'll take my chances," Sawyer said. "Now get out." They left, but their threats hung in the cold air like poison. Karga watched them ride away, her heart pounding, her hands shaking on the pitchfork handle. "They will come back," she said quietly. "With more men. They will not let this go." "Probably," Sawyer agreed, "but we'll deal with that when it happens. Right now, let's get you both inside." "We need to talk." In the warmth of the farmhouse kitchen, over mugs of hot tea, Sawyer laid out the situation. "Those men work for Harrow, but Harrow works for bigger players, merchants and landowners who control most of the trade in this region. If they've decided to make trouble for me, they can do it. They can make it hard for me to sell my goods, get supplies, even keep this land. Then we will leave, Grosh said immediately. We will not let you lose everything because of us. No, Sawyer said firmly. Absolutely not. That's letting them win. That's saying that people like them get to decide who lives where and who works for whom. I'm not doing that. But no buts. This is my farm, my choice. You're staying. Sawyer looked at both of them, his expression fierce. But I want you to be prepared. Things might get difficult. We might face harassment, violence, worse. I need to know you're ready for that. Karga thought about the night the debt collectors had come, when she had been ready to sell herself to save her father. She thought about all the years of running, hiding, trying to survive in a world that hated her for the color of her skin. She was so tired of running. I am ready, she said. I am ready to stand and fight. As am I, Grosh agreed. We owe you our lives, Sawyer Forrest. It is time we repaid that debt. Something complicated crossed Sawyer's face: pride, sadness, determination. Then we'll face whatever comes together, he said. All of us. The trouble, when it came, was both subtler and more pervasive than Karga had expected. No one attacked the farm directly, but when Sawyer went to town for supplies, merchants he had traded with for years suddenly had no goods to sell him. The blacksmith refused to shoe his horses. The general store turned him away at the door. Word spread that Sawyer Forrest was an orc lover, a traitor to his own kind, and he should be shunned until he came to his senses. Karga watched Sawyer grow quieter, more withdrawn. She saw the lines deepen around his eyes, saw him lying awake at night staring at the ceiling. He never complained, never blamed them, but the toll was visible. We have to do something, she told her father one evening in the barn. We cannot just let him suffer for our sake. What would you suggest? Grosh asked. We cannot make the humans stop hating us. That is beyond our power. But Karga was thinking. She had spent the last months learning everything she could about farming, not just the physical labor, but the business of it. She knew that Sawyer's winter wheat was almost ready for harvest, knew that he had a surplus of apple cider and preserved goods. She knew that the neighboring farms were struggling because their harvests had been poor. We can make ourselves valuable, she said slowly. Not just to Sawyer, but to the other farmers. We can offer to help with harvests, repairs, whatever they need. If they see that we are useful, maybe they will change their minds. Grosh looked skeptical. Or maybe they will take advantage of free labor and still hate us. Maybe, Karga admitted, but we have to try something. She brought the idea to Sawyer that night over dinner. He listened carefully, his blue eyes thoughtful. It's risky, he said finally. Some of those farmers might react badly to you showing up at their door. Then I will be careful, Karga said. But Sawyer, I cannot just sit here and watch you lose everything. You saved us. Let us try to save you. Sawyer was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, he said, but I'm coming with you. We do this together. They started with the farm closest to Sawyer's property, a smaller homestead run by a widow named Constance and her teenage son. Karga had seen them from a distance a few times, had noticed how run down their fences were, how their barn roof was sagging. When Sawyer and Karga approached the house, Constance came out with a shotgun. Whatever you are selling, I am not buying, she said, her voice hard. Especially not from you, Sawyer Forrest. I heard what you have been doing and I want no part of it. I am not selling anything, Sawyer said calmly. I am offering help. Your barn roof looks like it is about to collapse, and you have got fence sections that won't hold through winter. My worker here, he gestured to Karga, is skilled at carpentry. She could have those repairs done in a few days. No charge. Constance's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why would you do that? Because we are neighbors, Sawyer said. And because when my brother died and I was struggling to keep this place running, Your husband came over and helped me bring in my harvest. I never got a chance to repay that kindness before he passed. Let me repay it now." Something flickered in Constance's expression: grief, memory, uncertainty. She looked at Karga, taking in her green skin and tusks, her muscular build and steady gaze. "She will work, really work, not just cause trouble. She will work harder than anyone you have ever met," Sawyer said. "And if she does not, you can take it out of my hide." Constance lowered the shotgun slowly. 3 days, she said. "I will give you 3 days to fix the barn and the fences, but if anything goes wrong, if anything goes missing, I am holding you responsible." "Fair enough," Sawyer said. The work was backbreaking. The barn roof was worse than it had looked from a distance, with entire sections of shingles missing and the support beams rotted through. Karga and Sawyer worked from dawn to dusk, replacing beams, hammering new shingles, reinforcing the structure. Constance's son, a quiet boy named Thomas, watched them warily at first, but gradually began helping, handing up tools and holding boards steady. On the second day, as Karga was measuring a fence post, Thomas approached her hesitantly. "Is it true you are an orc?" he asked. Karga glanced at Sawyer, who gave her a small nod. "Yes," she said, "I am an orc. My ma says orcs are monsters, that they kill people and eat their children." Karga felt a flash of anger, but she kept her voice calm. "Some orcs do terrible things. Some humans do terrible things too. I am just trying to live my life and work hard, that is all." Thomas considered this. "You are different than I expected," he said finally. "You are not scary." "I can be scary if I need to be," Karga said with a slight smile, "but I would rather be helpful." By the third day, Constance had softened enough to bring them lunch, thick sandwiches and apple cider. She sat on the porch watching them work, and when they finished the last fence post, she stood and inspected everything with a critical eye. "It is good work," she admitted grudgingly. "Better than I expected, thank you." "You are welcome," Sawyer said. "If you need anything else, let us know." Constance hesitated, then said, "The Hendersons 2 farms over have a similar problem with their silo. They are too proud to ask for help, but they could use it. If you are serious about this neighborly thing, you might go see them." It was not friendship, it was not even acceptance, but it was a start. Word spread slowly. Karga and Sawyer went from farm to farm, offering labor in exchange for nothing more than the chance to prove themselves. They repaired buildings, helped with harvests, dug wells, mended fences. Grosh, his strength returning, joined them when he could, his carpentry skills proving invaluable. Some farmers turned them away. Some accepted their help but remained cold and distant. But a precious few, began to soften. They shared meals, asked Karga about her mother's farming techniques, included Sawyer in their conversations again. The change was gradual, almost imperceptible, but it was real. One evening, as winter began to loosen its grip, and the first signs of spring appeared, Karga and Sawyer were walking back to the farm together, tired and covered in mud from helping to clear a neighbor's flooded field. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and the air smelled of thawing earth and new growth. "You did it," Sawyer said suddenly. "Your plan worked. People are starting to come around." "We did it," Karga corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." Sawyer stopped walking, turning to face her. In the fading light, his eyes were very blue, very intense. "Karga, I need to tell you something." Her heart began to pound. "What?" He seemed to struggle with the words. "When I brought you and your father to the farm, I told myself it was just about giving you a fair chance, about doing the right thing. But somewhere along the way it became more than that. You became more than that." Karga could not breathe, could not think. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I care about you, more than I should, more than is probably wise. Sawyer ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know it is impossible. I know there is too much history, too much hatred between our peoples, but I cannot help how I feel, and I needed you to know. For a long moment, Karga just stared at him, her mind reeling. Then she stepped forward and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. His hand was warm and rough and perfect. It is not impossible, she said quietly. It is difficult, yes. It is dangerous, but it is not impossible. Because I feel the same way. I have felt the same way for months now. Sawyer's expression transformed, hope and joy and disbelief warring on his face. You do. I do, Karga confirmed. And then she was in his arms, and he was holding her like she was something precious. And the world fell away until there was nothing but the two of them and the dying light and the promise of spring. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, both of them learning the shape of each other. Karga's tusks made it slightly awkward, but Sawyer did not seem to mind, and when they finally pulled apart they were both breathing hard. This is going to be complicated, Sawyer warned, resting his forehead against hers. Everything worth having is complicated, Karga replied. They walked back to the farm hand in hand, not caring who might see, not caring what anyone might say. When they reached the barn, Grosh was waiting on the porch, his expression unreadable. Father, Karga started, but Grosh held up a hand. I am not blind, he said. I have seen the way you look at each other. I have known for weeks now. He looked at Sawyer, his gaze measuring. You understand what you are choosing. The world will not be kind to you, either of you. I know, Sawyer said, but I am done letting the world tell me how to live my life, and I am done pretending that I do not love your daughter. Grosh was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled, a genuine, warm expression that Karga had not seen on her father's face in years. Then you have my blessing, he said. For whatever that is worth. You are a good man, Sawyer Forrest, and my daughter is a remarkable woman. Together, you might just make this impossible thing work. The rest of the spring passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Karga and Sawyer kept their relationship quiet, not hiding it but not flaunting it either. There was too much risk in being open. Too many people who would use their love as an excuse for violence. But in the privacy of the farm, in the evenings after the work was done, they allowed themselves to be happy. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. They kissed in the barn loft, in the apple orchard, beside the creek that ran through Sawyer's property. They learned each other slowly, carefully, building something that felt solid and real and lasting. The neighbors, too, were changing. Constance invited them to a community barn raising, and while some farmers pointedly ignored Karga, others nodded to her, even thanked her for her help. The blacksmith, shamed by his neighbors for his earlier refusal, offered to shoe Sawyer's horses free of charge. The general store began stocking the special grain Grosh needed for his carpentry work. It was not perfect. There were still slurs thrown when they went to town, still doors closed in their faces. But it was better than it had been. It was progress. Then, in late spring, Merchant Harrow came to the farm. He arrived in a fancy carriage with 4 armed guards, his portly frame dressed in expensive clothes. He knocked on Sawyer's door like he owned the place, his smile as false as his concern. Mr. Forrest, he said when Sawyer opened the door, I believe we need to have a conversation about your employees. Sawyer crossed his arms, blocking the doorway. My employees are none of your business, Harrow. Oh, but they are. You see, I have been looking into the matter of that debt you supposedly paid off, and I have discovered some very interesting discrepancies. It seems that 2 of the coins you gave my collectors were, in fact, counterfeit, which means the debt is not fully settled. which means those orcs still belong to me. It was the same lie the debt collectors had tried, but coming from Harrow himself, with legal papers clutched in his fat fingers, it had more weight. Those coins were legitimate, Sawyer said flatly. I have the receipt from the merchant bank, and I am willing to have them verify every coin. This is a shakedown, Harrow, and we both know it. Harrow's smile widened. Then you won't mind if I bring the magistrate out here to settle the matter officially. Of course, if you are found to have defrauded me, there will be legal consequences. Jail time, most likely, and your property would be forfeit to pay the fines. The threat was clear. Whether the coins were real or not, Harrow had the money and connections to make Sawyer's life hell. He could drag this through courts, bribe officials, bleed Sawyer dry with legal fees. What do you want? Sawyer asked, his voice cold. I want what is owed to me, Harrow said. The orc girl, give her to me and I will forget about the discrepancies. You can keep the cripple. He is useless anyway. But the girl has value and I intend to collect. Before Sawyer could respond, Karga stepped out onto the porch. She had been listening from inside, her heart pounding with fury and fear. I am not property, she said. You cannot own me. Harrow looked her up and down, his eyes lingering in ways that made her skin crawl. In point of fact, you are property. Your father's debt makes you so, and I have buyers lined up who will pay very well for an exotic creature like you. He pulled out another paper. I have a contract right here, all legal and proper. Sign it, and this all goes away. Karga looked at the contract, at the words that would sign away her freedom, her body, her future. Then she looked at Sawyer, at the man she had come to love, and saw the same calculation happening behind his eyes that she was making. If she refused, Harrow would destroy Sawyer. He would take the farm, throw Sawyer in jail, leave Grosh homeless and alone. But if she agreed, she would be sent to a pleasure house, used and broken until there was nothing left of the person she had been. No, Sawyer said before she could speak. Absolutely not. You are not taking her, Harrow. I will fight you in every court in this territory if I have to. Then you will lose, Harrow said pleasantly. But please, go ahead and try. I will enjoy watching you ruin yourself for the sake of a greenskin whore. Sawyer moved so fast that Harrow's guards barely had time to react. He grabbed the merchant by his expensive coat and slammed him against the porch railing, one hand around his throat. Say that again, Sawyer growled, and Karga saw the soldier he had been, the killer, cold and lethal. Say it again and see what happens. The guards had drawn their weapons, but they were hesitant, clearly not wanting to escalate to violence unless necessary. Harrow's face was turning red, his eyes bulging. Sawyer, Karga said softly, let him go. It took a visible effort, but Sawyer released Harrow and stepped back. The merchant gasped for air, one hand going to his bruised throat. That was assault, he wheezed, in front of witnesses. I could have you arrested right now. Do it, Sawyer said flatly. I will tell the magistrate exactly why I grabbed you, and we can see how he feels about a merchant trying to force a woman into sexual slavery. Harrow straightened his coat with shaking hands, some of his composure returning. You think you can win this with righteousness and threats? You are a fool, Forrest. I have been doing business in this territory for 20 years. I own half the officials and have dirt on the other half. You cannot beat me. Maybe not, Sawyer agreed, but I can make it expensive and embarrassing for you. And I can make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. That might not bother you, but I bet it bothers your wife, your children, your business partners who like to pretend they are respectable. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Harrow's face. He looked at Karga, at Sawyer, calculating odds. This is not over, he said finally. I will give you 1 week to reconsider, 1 week to hand over the orc girl and settle this peacefully. After that, I go to the magistrate, and we will see who the law favors, a respected merchant or an orc-loving troublemaker." He gestured to his guards. "We are leaving." They watched the carriage pull away, and Karga felt like she was going to be sick. "He will not stop," she said. "He will find a way to win, and when he does, he will destroy all of us." "Then we need to find a way to stop him first," Sawyer said grimly, "and I think I know how." That night, Sawyer gathered Karga, Grosh, and 4 of their neighbors, Constance, Thomas, an older farmer named Robert, and a young woman named Eliza who had recently inherited her family's land. They sat around Sawyer's kitchen table, tension thick in the air. "I need your help," Sawyer said without preamble, "and I need you to understand that helping me might cost you. Harrow has money and influence, and he is not afraid to use them." "What are you proposing?" Robert asked. His weathered face creased with concern. Sawyer laid out his plan. Harrow's power came from his reputation and his relationships with corrupt officials. But Sawyer had been doing some research, asking questions, and he had discovered that Harrow was involved in several shady dealings, smuggling, fraud, possibly even slave trading beyond what he was trying to do to Karga. If they could gather proof, they could take it to the territorial governor, bypass the local magistrate entirely. "It is risky," Sawyer admitted, "and it requires someone to get inside Harrow's operation to find documentation of his crimes." "I will do it," Karga said immediately. "No," Sawyer said. "Absolutely not. It is too dangerous." "It has to be me," Karga insisted. "Harrow wants me. If I approach him, offer to settle the debt willingly, he will let his guard down. He will want to show me off to his associates, brag about his acquisition. That is when I can find the evidence we need." "She is right," Grosh said heavily. "I do not like it, but she is right. Harrow will not suspect her of being a spy. He thinks orcs are too stupid for that kind of subterfuge." Sawyer looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew they were right. "If we do this," he said, "we do it carefully. Karga goes in, finds what we need, and gets out. We will have people watching, ready to extract her if things go wrong." "I can help with that," Constance said. "Thomas and I can keep watch outside Harrow's estate. If she needs us, we will be there." "And I can ride to the governor's office," Eliza added. "It is a 2-day journey, but if we have real evidence, the governor will have to act. He has been looking for an excuse to crack down on corruption in this region." They talked through the details long into the night, planning every step, every contingency. And when the meeting finally broke up and the neighbors left, Sawyer pulled Karga aside. "I do not want you to do this," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "The thought of you walking into that monster's hands makes me physically ill." "I know," Karga said, taking his face in her hands. "But this is the only way. We cannot run from him, and we cannot fight him openly. This is how we win. And if something goes wrong, if he hurts you, then you will come for me," Karga said with absolute certainty. "Just like you came for me that first night. I trust you, Sawyer, with my life, with everything." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, pouring all his fear and love into the contact. "When this is over," he said against her lips, "when we have beaten Harrow and you are safe, I am going to ask you to marry me. I do not care what anyone says. I do not care about the laws or the prejudice. I want you to be my wife." Karga's heart swelled so large she thought it might burst. "Then we better make sure I survive this," she said with a shaky smile. "Because my answer is going to be yes." 3 days later, Karga walked up to Merchant Harrow's estate dressed in her plainest clothes, her head bowed in apparent submission. The mansion was ostentatious, all white columns and manicured gardens, a monument to wealth built on suffering. A servant answered her knock, eyeing her with disdain. "Tradesmen use the back entrance," he said. "I am not a tradesman," Karga said. "I am here to see Merchant Harrow." He will want to see me." The servant looked skeptical, but he went to check. A few minutes later, Harrow himself appeared, his face lighting up with greedy satisfaction when he saw her. "The orc girl," he said. "Come to your senses, have you?" "I have come to discuss terms," Karga said, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. "I will settle my father's debt, but I want certain guarantees first." Harrow's smile widened. Of course. Come in, let us discuss this like civilized people." He led her into a study that smelled of cigars and old leather. The walls were lined with books that looked like they had never been read, and expensive art that had probably been acquired through the same shady means as everything else Harrow owned. "Now then," Harrow said, pouring himself a brandy and not offering her any. "What guarantees do you want?" "I want my father left alone," Karga said. "And I want Sawyer Forest left alone. No legal action, no harassment, no retaliation." "Done," Harrow said easily. "I have no interest in a cripple or a foolish farmer. As long as they stay out of my way, I will stay out of theirs." "And I want to see the contract," Karga continued. "The terms of my employment, how long I will be working, what exactly I will be doing, where I will be going." Harrow's eyes narrowed slightly. "Concerned about the details, are you? I suppose that is fair. Wait here." He left the room, and Karga's heart began to race. This was her chance. She had maybe 5 minutes before he returned. She moved quickly to his desk, rifling through the papers scattered across its surface. Bills of lading, correspondence, receipts, nothing immediately useful. Then she spotted a locked drawer. She pulled a hairpin from her braid and picked the lock with skills her father had taught her years ago. Inside were ledgers, meticulously kept records of Harrow's various enterprises. She scanned the pages rapidly, her eyes widening as she saw entries for special merchandise orc women and children bought from slavers and sold to pleasure houses. There were records of bribes paid to local officials, of smuggled goods, of debts collected through coercion and violence. It was exactly what they needed. Karga pulled several pages from the ledger, folding them small and tucking them inside her bodice. She had just closed the drawer and picked the lock again when she heard footsteps approaching. Harrow entered with a contract in hand, but his expression had changed. There was something cold in his eyes now, something calculating. "Here you are," he said, handing her the papers. "Though I must say I am curious about something." "What?" Karga asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Why are you really here?" Harrow moved closer, invading her space. "I find it hard to believe you came to submit willingly. You strike me as the type who would fight until the bitter end." "So what changed?" "I realized I could not win," Karga said, which was not entirely a lie. "And I wanted to protect the people I care about." "How noble," Harrow said mockingly. He was very close now, close enough that she could smell the brandy on his breath. "Or how foolish." "Did you really think I would not notice you snooping? My servant told me you looked nervous, jumpy, and I have not survived this long by being careless." Karga's hand moved toward the knife at her belt, but Harrow was faster. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it painfully. "What did you take?" he demanded. "What did you take from my desk?" "Nothing," Karga gasped, but Harrow was already reaching into her bodice, pulling out the folded papers. His face went purple with rage when he saw what they were. "You stupid creature," he hissed. "Did you really think you could steal from me? Spy on me?" He backhanded her across the face, and Karga tasted blood. "I am going to make an example of you. By the time I am done, every orc in this territory will know what happens when they cross Merchant Harrow." He was reaching for a bell to summon his guards when the window exploded inward. Sawyer came through in a shower of glass, rolling to his feet with a speed that spoke of old military training. He punched Harrow in the face before the merchant could even react, sending him sprawling backward. "Karga, run," Sawyer shouted, but Karga was not running. She grabbed the ledgers from where Harrow had dropped them and shoved them back into her bodice, then turned to help Sawyer. Harrow's guards were pouring into the room now, 4 large men with clubs and knives. Sawyer fought like a demon, using furniture as weapons, breaking noses and ribs with ruthless efficiency. But he was outnumbered, and one of the guards got behind him, wrapping an arm around his throat. Karga grabbed a heavy bookend and smashed it into the guard's temple. He went down like a stone, and Sawyer broke free, gasping for air. Together they fought their way to the door, Karga using her size and strength to knock men aside while Sawyer covered their retreat. They burst out into the hallway and ran for the front entrance. Behind them, Harrow was screaming for more men, for the magistrate, for blood. They made it to the front door just as Constance and Thomas pulled up in a wagon, Thomas at the reins with a determined expression on his young face. "Get in," Constance shouted, and they threw themselves into the wagon bed. Thomas snapped the reins, and the horses lunged forward, carrying them away from the mansion at a reckless gallop. They did not stop until they were miles away, deep in the forest where the roads were narrow and hard to follow. Only then did Sawyer pull Karga into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Don't ever do that to me again," he said, his voice shaking. "When I saw him hit you, I wanted to kill him." "I got the evidence," Karga said, pulling the papers from her bodice. "Everything we need to bury him." Constance examined the documents, her eyes widening. This is bad, really bad. If the governor sees this, Harrow will hang." "Good," Sawyer said coldly. "He deserves it." Eliza was waiting for them at a predetermined meeting point, her horse already saddled and ready. "I will ride through the night," she promised, taking the documents. "The governor will have these within 2 days. Hold out until then." She rode off into the gathering darkness, and the rest of them made their way back to Sawyer's farm. They knew Harrow would come. They knew he would bring men, probably try to burn the farm down or kill them all. But they also knew they had allies now, neighbors who had agreed to stand with them. The attack came at dawn the next day. Harrow arrived with a dozen hired thugs, carrying torches and weapons, his face still bruised from Sawyer's punch. But he found the farm ready for him. Sawyer, Karga, Grosh, Constance, Thomas, Robert, and half a dozen other neighbors stood in a line across the farmyard, armed with whatever they could find: axes, scythes, hunting rifles, and determination. "This is your last warning, Forrest," Harrow called. "Hand over the orc and the documents she stole, and I might let you live." "Come and take them," Sawyer replied, his voice calm and cold. For a long moment, the two groups faced each other, tension crackling like lightning. Then one of Harrow's thugs made the mistake of lighting his torch and stepping forward. Robert shot the torch out of his hand. The message was clear: come closer, and the next shot would not miss. Harrow's men hesitated, looking at each other, clearly not having signed up for a fight against this many armed and angry farmers. "You are all going to regret this," Harrow snarled. "Every single one of you. I will see you all ruined." "No," said a new voice. "You will not." A man on horseback rode into view, flanked by 4 soldiers wearing the governor's colors. He was middle-aged, with a stern face and the bearing of someone used to authority. "Merchant Harrow," he said. "I am Captain Williams, representing Governor Ashford. You are under arrest for smuggling, fraud, bribery of public officials, and slave trading. Your assets are hereby frozen pending investigation." Harrow's face went from purple to white in an instant. "This is a mistake," he stammered. "I am a respected businessman. I have done nothing wrong." "The evidence says otherwise," Captain Williams replied. He gestured to his soldiers, who moved forward to clamp irons around Harrow's wrists. "We have been investigating you for months. but we could never get the proof we needed, until a very brave woman brought us your own ledgers." He nodded to Karga. "The governor sends his thanks." Harrow was dragged away, still protesting, still threatening. His hired thugs scattered, wanting nothing to do with the mess their employer had made. And just like that, it was over. The neighbors began to disperse, tired but satisfied, offering congratulations and promises to help repair the damage to Sawyer's window. Constance hugged Karga briefly, surprising them both. "You did good," she said simply. "Real good." When everyone was finally gone, and it was just the three of them, Sawyer, Karga, and Grosh, they collapsed on the porch steps, exhausted and exhilarated. "We won," Karga said, hardly believing it. "We actually won." "You won," Sawyer corrected, taking her hand. "You were brave and clever, and you took a massive risk to save all of us." "We all did," Karga said. Together, Grosh cleared his throat. "I am going to go check on the livestock," he announced, standing with some difficulty. "Give you two some privacy." He winked at his daughter and limped off toward the barn, leaving them alone. Sawyer turned to face Karga, his expression serious. "I meant what I said before, about asking you to marry me. I know it is fast. I know there are 1,000 reasons why it is a terrible idea, but I love you, Karga. I have loved you for months now, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you if you will have me." Karga felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. "There are laws against humans and orcs marrying," she pointed out. "Then we will find a priest who does not care about laws," Sawyer said. "Or we will handfast ourselves and call it good enough. I do not need the government's permission to love you." "Yes," Karga said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you, Sawyer Forrest. In whatever way we can, legally or not. I will be yours and you will be mine." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Karga felt like the whole world had shifted, like everything that had been broken was finally being made whole. The wedding took place 3 months later in the spring, with wildflowers blooming across the fields and the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. They held it on the farm, under the apple trees that were just beginning to bud, and half the neighboring farms turned out to witness it. The ceremony itself was simple. A traveling priest who asked no questions about species or laws spoke words about love and commitment and partnership. Sawyer wore his best clothes, and Karga wore a dress that Constance had helped her make, simple but beautiful, dyed a deep blue that brought out the green of her skin. When the priest asked if they took each other as husband and wife, they both said yes with voices that rang clear and strong. And when he pronounced them married, Sawyer kissed his orc bride in front of everyone, his hands gentle on her face, and Karga felt like she was going to burst from happiness. The celebration lasted into the night, with food and music and dancing. Grosh got pleasantly drunk and told embarrassing stories about Karga as a child. Constance taught Sawyer a complicated country dance that he could not quite master, leading to much laughter. Even the neighbors who had been most skeptical seemed to be enjoying themselves, caught up in the joy of the occasion. As the moon rose and the party began to wind down, Sawyer took Karga's hand and led her away from the crowd, out into the fields where they could be alone. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. "How does it feel to be Karga Forrest?" Sawyer asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Karga leaned back against him, sighing contentedly. "It feels right," she said. "It feels like home." They stood there for a long time, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the sounds of the night crickets chirping, an owl calling in the distance, the wind rustling through new leaves. In the morning, there would be work to do, fields to plant, animals to tend, a life to build together. But for now, there was just this moment, this perfect, impossible, beautiful moment. "I love you," Karga said softly. "I love you too," Sawyer replied. Always. The seasons turned as they always did. Spring gave way to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to the cold beauty of winter, and then around again. The farm prospered under their combined efforts, becoming known throughout the region for the quality of its produce and the fairness of its owners. Karga and Sawyer's marriage, once a scandal, gradually became accepted. Oh, there were still those who muttered and disapproved, but they were outnumbered by the people who had seen the couple's kindness, their hard work, their genuine love for each other. Children growing up in the area learned that orcs were not monsters to be feared, but people who could be friends, neighbors, family. Grosh lived to see his grandchildren, 3 of them, each one a beautiful blend of human and orc features. He dandled them on his knee and told them stories of the old days, of their grandmother who had been brave and strong, of the man who had thrown down gold instead of looking away. "Your father saved us," he would tell them, "but your mother saved him right back. That is what love is, little ones. It is choosing to save each other, every single day." When Grosh finally passed, peacefully in his sleep after a long and good life, they buried him under the apple trees where Karga and Sawyer had been married. The whole community came to pay their respects, humans and orcs alike, for in the years since that fateful night when Sawyer had burst into a poor farmhouse with 200 gold pieces, many other orc families had followed Karga's example, seeking honest work and peaceful lives on the frontier. Karga grieved her father deeply, but she also celebrated the life he had lived. He had survived war, injury, poverty, and prejudice. He had lived to see his daughter happy, to hold his grandchildren, to be part of a community that valued him. It was more than many orcs ever got, and she was grateful for every moment. Years passed. Sawyer's hair went completely silver, and lines etched deep around his eyes. Karga's tusks grew more prominent with age, and her green skin took on a weathered quality. But they still worked the farm together every day, still sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sunset, still reached for each other in the night. Their children grew up strong and kind, and when they were old enough, they went out into the world to make their own marks. One became a healer like Martha had been, traveling from farm to farm tending to the sick. Another took over a neighboring property, expanding the family's holdings. The third became a teacher, educating the next generation about tolerance and understanding. And Karga and Sawyer remained on the farm, the place where they had built their impossible love into something lasting and real. They hosted community gatherings, mentored young couples who faced the same prejudices they had overcome, and lived their lives as proof that love could bridge any divide. On their 20th anniversary, Sawyer took Karga back to the spot where he had proposed, under the apple trees that were now ancient and gnarled but still producing fruit every year. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Choosing this life, choosing me?" Karga looked at him, at this man who had thrown down gold for strangers, who had fought for her when the world said she was not worth fighting for, who had loved her steadily and truly for 2 decades. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment." "Good," Sawyer said, smiling that smile that still made her heart flutter. "Because I have never regretted you either. Best decision I ever made, paying that debt." "Best decision I ever made, letting you," Karga replied. And they kissed under the apple trees, their love as strong and enduring as the day they had first admitted it to each other. The farm continued to thrive long after Karga and Sawyer were gone, passed down through their children and grandchildren. The story of how it began with a desperate orc girl, her injured father, and a farmer who chose compassion over convenience became legend in the region. Parents told it to their children, and those children told it to their children in turn. And always, The message was the same. That love is stronger than hate, that courage can change the world, and that sometimes the best investment you can make is in another person's dignity and freedom. The apple trees still bloom every spring, standing as living monuments to the impossible, beautiful thing that Karga and Sawyer built together. And if you listen carefully on quiet evenings, when the wind rustles through their branches, you can almost hear the echo of laughter, of promises kept, of a love that defied every odd and won. That is the story of they demanded the orc pay her father's debt with her body, and the farmer threw down gold instead. It is a story of darkness overcome by light, of prejudice defeated by compassion, of two people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something that lasted forever. And it is a story that proves, above all else, that every person, orc or human, rich or poor, broken or whole, has value. That every person deserves the chance to be saved, to be seen, to be loved. Sawyer saw that value in Karga and her father when no one else would. He threw down gold instead of looking away, and in doing so, he did not just save 2 lives. He changed an entire community, showed that a better world was possible, and found the love of his life. In the end, that 200 gold pieces was the best investment he ever made. Not because it bought him anything, but because it gave him everything that truly mattered: family, community, purpose, and a love that transcended every boundary the world tried to place between them. Some said it was destiny that brought them together that night. Others called it luck or coincidence, but Karga and Sawyer knew better. It was choice. The choice to care when it would have been easier not to. The choice to act when others stood by. The choice to love when the world said they should not. And that choice, made again and again every day for the rest of their lives, made all the difference.